A woman was found burned to death in a remote Norwegian valley in 1970. She had 8 fake identities, suitcases full of disguises, sanded-off fingerprints, and movements that corresponded to top-secret military weapons tests. She was never identified. The case was closed within weeks, and someone made sure it stayed that way. On the morning of November 29, 1970, a father took his 2 young daughters hiking through Isdalen, a remote valley outside Bergen, Norway. Locals had always called it Death Valley because of its treacherous terrain and eerie atmosphere. That morning, the name felt appropriate. Nestled between the rocks, they found the burned remains of a woman lying on her back with her head pointing downhill. The front of her body and her face had been completely destroyed by fire. Her hands were clenched against her chest. Around her, arranged in a way that one forensic investigator later told the BBC looked like some kind of ceremony, were a collection of objects: an umbrella, a watch, 2 earrings, a ring, rubber boots, nylon stockings, 2 plastic water bottles, an empty bottle of liqueur, a matchbox, and scraps of burned paper. Every single object had its labels and identifying marks carefully removed. There was no passport, only a melted plastic passport cover near the body, suggesting one had existed and been destroyed. There was also a fur hat underneath the body, partially protected from the fire. It was not a Norwegian-style hat. It was the kind commonly worn in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, which in 1970 were part of the Soviet Union. It had no label. The autopsy revealed she had died from a combination of sleeping pills and carbon monoxide poisoning. The sleeping pills alone were enough to kill. But what made no sense was the fire. She had been burned after death, or while unconscious. Someone had set her on fire and positioned the objects around her, and then walked away into the Norwegian mountains, leaving no trace. 3 days after the body was found, a station attendant at Bergen railway station contacted police. 2 suitcases had been sitting unclaimed for over a week, inside. Investigators found something extraordinary. Multiple wigs, glasses, items that appeared to be disguises, and every single label on every single item of clothing had been carefully and deliberately cut out, then deep in the lining of one suitcase. 5 100 Deutsche Mark notes, in the corner of a pair of sunglasses, a partial fingerprint. It matched the Isdal woman. These were her bags, but they told investigators almost nothing about who she was. Bergen police sent a sketch to every hotel in Norway. The responses that came back were astonishing. The woman had been traveling through Norway for 8 months, from March to November 1970, checking into hotels in Oslo, Trondheim, Stavanger, and Bergen, under 8 completely different names. None of them were real. Hotel staff remembered her as fashionable, quiet, and serious. She spoke poor English, but fluent German and Flemish. One waitress remembered her dining next to 2 German Navy personnel, including an officer, and not seeming surprised to see them there. When investigators examined her hands more closely, they found something deeply unsettling. Her fingerprints had been deliberately sanded off, not worn down by labor, deliberately removed, combined with the cut labels, the fake identities, the destroyed passport, and the burned face. One conclusion became unavoidable. Someone had spent considerable time and effort making absolutely certain this woman could never be identified. Whether that someone was the woman herself or another person, nobody could say. Unknown to Bergen police, Norwegian military intelligence had quietly opened their own separate investigation. Because when they mapped the Isdal woman's movements across Norway, something alarming emerged. Her route corresponded precisely to the locations of top-secret trials of the Penguin missile. Norway's most advanced weapons system at the time. A fisherman came forward to report that he had seen a woman matching her description, observing military movements near Stavanger. A classified document from December 1970, later declassified, showed that the Norwegian Armed Forces commander had noted formally that her movements matched the missile trials. Military intelligence believed she had been watching them. They just did not know who she was working for. In early 1971, just weeks after the body was discovered, Norwegian authorities ordered the case closed. The official verdict was probable suicide. Some investigators refused to accept it. Bergen investigator Harald Osland could never put the case away. His son, Tor Osland, told the BBC decades later, "My father could never let this go." He believed the case had been closed too quickly. Some speculated it had been closed because it had implications too large to investigate openly. If the woman was connected to intelligence work, opening a full investigation risked exposing things that powerful people did not want exposed. The case was sealed. The woman was buried in a zinc coffin to preserve her remains in case relatives ever came forward, and the file was put away. In 2017, researchers from the University of Canberra used isotopic analysis on the enamel of the Isdal woman's preserved teeth, a technique that had never been used in a Norwegian criminal investigation before. The results were remarkable. She had almost certainly grown up somewhere along the border between France and Germany. Around the age of 14, she had moved westward toward France, possibly during or just before World War II. Analysis of her handwriting indicated she had learned to write in French or a French-speaking country. She was closer to 40 years old than 30. She had 14 dental fillings and several gold crowns, unusual for someone her age, and not typical of Norwegian dental work. In 2019, after a French newspaper published an article about the case, a resident of Forbach, a town on the French-German border, came forward with an extraordinary claim. He said he had briefly known the Isdal woman in the summer of 1970. He described her as speaking several languages, with what he believed was a Balkan accent. He had suspected something was wrong, because she received strange phone calls from abroad at odd hours. One day, while she was out, he searched through her belongings and found wigs and clothes that appeared to be disguises. He believed she was a spy. He had taken a photograph of her riding a horse. It was the clearest image of the Isdal woman ever found. It changed nothing. She still has not been identified. She is buried in a cemetery in Bergen. Her grave marker says only, "The Isdal woman, November 1970. No name, no country, no family." The case was reopened by Norwegian authorities in 2016. DNA was extracted and entered into international databases. No match was ever found. In 2019, the case was reviewed again. No new conclusions were reached. 55 years after two young girls found a burned woman on a Norwegian hillside, nobody knows who she was. Nobody knows who burned her. Nobody knows why she was in Norway. Nobody knows who she was watching. And nobody knows why a government closed the case in weeks and sealed the file for decades. The Norwegian government has never fully released all documents related to the case. Military intelligence files remain partially classified. The taxi driver who drove her to Bergen railway station on her last known journey was never found. The two men she was seen walking with on a hiking trail 5 days before her death, who looked Southern according to a witness, were never identified. A witness who tried to report the men to police at the time was told to forget about it. His statement was never recorded. 55 years later, the valley locals still call it Death Valley, and somewhere in a zinc coffin in a Bergen cemetery, a woman who knew things powerful people did not want known is still waiting for someone to say her name.